What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new LeBron NXXT Gen Amped, and I've been getting a lot of requests to review this shoe, and I guess my biggest question is, are they any bit of an upgrade actually from the original NXXT Gen, and are they worth the price increase from the original NXXT Gen? So let's get into it. Now, there's no denying the uppers of the NXXT Gen Amped are quite a bit more substantial than the original NXXT Gen, which had mostly mesh going around the toe box and then coming up into the lace line, whereas the Amped, it's either synthetic leather or a really tough backed panel around the entirety of the upper. It does have some breathing points right in the forefoot. However, nothing really gets through those breathing points. You look at this on the breathability test, 144.1 degrees, these things heated up, which I actually thought they were going to heat up more. I think that how porous the tongue is really kind of saves the day on these, but the NXXT Gen original obviously did not heat up nearly as much. And if you look at the breathability mapping of this, there is really no fog getting out of really anywhere besides the tongue. And even at the tongue, it takes a while before it gets anywhere close to those pores on the tongue. So I think the tongue is exchanging heat. It's not really exchanging too much moisture though, especially with this colorway of the NXXT Gen Amped. All this paneling here is just gonna hold on to a ton of heat and moisture. If you're playing in a climate controlled environment, I don't think it's gonna matter, especially because there is Nike Sphere within the ankle collar of the shoe. It is gonna keep you a little bit more cool. And I think in the NXXT Gen, the original, this was a nice feature. In the NXXT Gen Amped, it's absolutely necessary. So if you look at the upper durability test on these, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the burr to start to work through the waxing here. However, because this paneling is so thick, number one, to containment, it's absolutely outstanding, especially in the forefoot here because it is double stitched. But number two, to abrasion resistance, especially on indoor courts where the friction isn't gonna get that high. I think this is a really nice choice. On outdoor courts though, even though, I think it'll last long enough, it's gonna start to look super scuffed. So for durability, it's okay. For looks though, you're gonna start to see a road rash here pretty quick. Now, looking at the midsole on the teardown, obviously, these are pretty much the same as the original NXXT Gens. Giant heel zoom air unit, pretty stiff top-loaded shank in the midfoot. And then you've got a zoom turbo unit in the forefoot. That zoom turbo unit, especially in the NXXT Gen Amped, once again, really, really necessary because the shoe is pretty stiff in the uppers as it is. So once you break in those uppers, you're actually gonna get a lot more forgiveness out of the midsole. At first, honestly, you don't even really feel anything in the midsole because the uppers are so stiff, and especially in this colorway. I think in the one that has the synthetic leather on it, I think it's gonna be a lot better in terms of break-in. But if you look at the bounce height test on that, got 36.5 centimeters in the heel, 42.5 in the forefoot, and that's pretty typical for zoom air, right? The thinner zoom air units usually pop a little bit more versus the larger zoom air units. To me, for bounce and shock absorption, this midsole setup, I should say, is one of the better ones in terms of hitting that sweet spot between shock absorption as well as bounce. Because a lot of times, a shoe can be good for both, for sure. But a lot of times if it's good for one, it kind of sacrifices on the other. The NXXT Gens, to me, especially with the cushion underneath of it and that shank, it's being protected by all that air plus the shank. You can actually use the cushion for shock absorption. So the NXXT Gen as well as the NXXT Gen Amped, to me, are two of the best shoes out there for that sweet spot between getting enough bounce once the NXXT Gen Amps are broken in. But it's one of the best shoes out there for bounce as well as shock absorption. All right, now looking at the outsole tread of these things, it's still the same nice City of Akron, basically road map pattern on these. Now, what I've noticed on these is because it is full length, you can grab pretty nimble traction from really anywhere on the shoe. The bad part is on these is it picks up dust quite a bit. And in terms of initial grip on the grip test RAM, it didn't slip till 41 degrees, which is, is pretty good. It's in that upper echelon. It's just when they pick up dust, you can definitely feel a little bit of give in them. It's not terrible, and they're pretty just easy to wipe down for sure. So I think as long as you keep a towel around to wipe these down, you're gonna get pretty decent grip. And because, like I said, the shoe is so stiff, initially when you're on the court and they're picking up dust, it's hard then to kind of dig into the court and get traction. Once the shoe is broken in and you can actually break the rubber in, break the uppers in, and actually bend the shoe a little bit more, that's when you're gonna be able to get into that next phase of traction where the shoe is just a little bit more buttery, able to dig into the shoe and to use all those really narrow lines and digital patterns on this to actually dig into the court as the shoe intended. But speaking of what these do when you break them in, if you look at the speed ratio on these, it comes in at a 2.61. Shank score of 0.2 brings it up to a 2.81. I do think that is overselling it a little bit for the next gen Amped until they're broken in. Remember, they are a little bit heavier than the original next gens. They take a lot longer to break in than the next gens, and they have the same midsole and outsole setup as the next gens. I think once they're broken in, they're a very easy shoe to get first step launch in, and for a mid-top shoe that's a little bit more maximalist, they're one of the quicker ones out there for sure. They're definitely not speed demons. Because the shoe is just so bulky in there, it's definitely not a super easy north to south shoe, especially until they're broken in. I know it's like the theme of this video is break in, but like I said, in terms of a mid shoe that is a little bit bulkier, the launch in them once they're broken in with that midsole setup is actually pretty elite. On the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, that's another thing that's kind of a conundrum to me. The durometer isn't ridiculously high, but I mean, not even a millimeter of damage, almost a millimeter of damage on these. And the only bad thing is because this digital pattern here is just so thin and narrow, these things are just really out there. So on outdoor courts, if you can get the XDR rubber, I think these actually aren't a terrible pickup because of how protective they are on outdoor courts. But for indoor courts, I actually think these are one of the more durable Nike products out there in their just original form, the non-XDR rubber. So if you keep them on hardwood or rubberized courts, especially the next gen Amped, I do think these things will be with you for the duration. The most surprising part by far of the Amps though is their fit. You would think with the upper break-in profile, these things would have a really unforgiving fit. The truth is, they're actually pretty buttery. Now, the reason for that is number one, the width is just pretty true, but because the materials on the underside of the uppers or on the foot-facing side of the uppers are so substantial and easy to break in, your foot actually breaks in the inside of the shoe a lot quicker than it breaks in the outside. So in a narrow medium foot, I think just go true to size. A 2E foot, I think if you've got deformity, I'd probably be going up 1/2 size because the lockdown on these is pretty good. A 4E, remember, this is a pretty substantial shoe with a substantial break-in, so I'd probably try to go up 1 size, but just remember, you're gonna be in for a real slog in terms of break-in. In terms of the snake bit and foot though, I'd say right now, these are probably one of the best Nikes out there for any lumps, bumps, and bruises, especially heel pain, ball of foot pain, tendonitis, arch pain, arch strain. They're incredibly forgiving, except if you have like forefoot arthritis, things like that. You might want to have somebody else break these in for you because it is going to annoy you if you've got those forefoot nagging arthritic issues or toe issues because they're just so unforgiving in the uppers. Once they break in, they're buttery and fine, but either shoe stretcher, have them broken in artificially first before you try to get them on. And if you do that, I think most people on these are going to find something they like. Now, in terms of the performance of these things, they're pretty much the same as the original next gen, except that you're gonna get better containment for longer, but they're gonna take longer to break in. They're not gonna feel as buttery as the original next gens. They're not gonna have as much breathability as the original next gens. I would say if all you want is containment out of a shoe, this is one of the better ones out there. I think that the LeBron 21 and these have similar side to side stability and containment. They just do it in different ways, but these are gonna give you just a little bit more of a substantial feeling underfoot. If you want that bulky mid feeling underfoot, but you want something like the AG4, maybe you want something like the Big 3 Future from 361, but in a Nike model, this is probably the best you're gonna get. To me, these are every bit as good as the LeBron 21s in a lot of different categories. They're just not as nimble as the LeBron 21s. I think for north to south speed in these, they're still not the greatest things in the world. Even when they are broken in, they're not bricks per se, but they just don't pick up speed like some other shoes. They can though get quick launch though. So like what I was just doing right here when you come to a dead stop and all your momentum is just stopping and then you got to pop up off the ground again. That's where I think these do their best work in terms of quick containment and then being able to kind of recharge, get back up off the ground. So I think a shoe for a bigger guard, maybe a more nimble power forward, something like that, then I think these are really fantastic. And like I said, in terms of the mid category and with Nike, this is really, you know, the best you're gonna get. Do you have to upgrade from the next gen Amped to these? I don't think so. I think if you can get discounts of the original next gens, I think then, you know, the differences are gonna be like I said, I don't know if it's enough to justify getting like the brand new colorway of the Amped versus a discount of the Next Gen. Both good shoes. I think it really just depends if you want to reach further into your wallet or not. For me, I'd be just as happy in the Next Gen versus the Next Gen Amped. But of course, love to hear your thoughts on the Next Gen Amped. Are you picking up a pair of these, or are you going for discounted pairs of the original Next Gen? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see all the coolest and maybe weirdest accessories for your pair of Next Gen Amped or whatever shoe you are bringing to the court, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse. Incredibly unforgiving fit profile. However, they really don't. Oh God, I just can't make one shot today, huh?